Hi, I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and today I'm doing my CE interview on core finance. Today, my guest is Manolo Zuniga, President and CEO of PetroTal Corp. Welcome aboard, Manolo. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well, Malcy.
It's a great pleasure to have you on my CEO interview today. I wondered if it was best for those of us who aren't quite so up to speed with PetroTal, if you could give us a run through or a bit of an overview on PetroTal.
Oh, yes, I'd love to do that. PetroTal was set up at the end of 2017 to acquire assets in Peru. The company now has a producing field and have an exploration block. The block where the producing field is located, it also has some additional upside. The premise that when we went to the market to raise capital, initially through an RTO and initial equity raise, we raised about $50 million. It was that this company is being set up to be profitable at oil at $40, $45. You may remember about 2017, that's where oil prices were around. So for us, it was very important to be able to do that. And last year, through the pandemic, actually, we have proven that that is the case. Last April, for example, when oil was at 26 Brent, we had a positive EBITDA. So actually we proved what we told our investors. So the company very quickly went into action, and the existing field that used to be owned by Gran Tierra had one existing oil well and one existing water disposal well. But it was shut in, and we committed to have it on production in less than a year on less than $25 million. People thought that I was exaggerating when we put that target. But actually, that field, that well came on production in just 5 months. And at the end, it cost us 25% less capex. And from then on, we grew production to 10,000 barrels of oil per day. That's where we are right now. And of course, during last year, nothing much had been done. We only drilled one well. And now we plan to go back to drilling and reaching our goal of 20,000 barrels per day mark. So this is a field that nowadays has about 47 million barrels of 2P reserves. And I have mentioned to investors, once all of the capex is deployed, this is going to be a free cash flow in company for years to come.
Excellent. Well, that's a good rundown of where we are, because we now know that you're in Peru. You've got the Britannia field. And you're comfortable to well below $30 a barrel, as I understand it. But at the moment, as we'll come to later, it's in very good condition. You've just secured a $100 million bond, Manolo. This must leave you pretty well financed going forwards. Why don't you tell us the rationale for that and how it's going and what you're going to do with the money?
Well, we had a couple of debt facilities that we needed to take care of. Some of that money is to pay those two debt facilities. We also wanted to have additional capital to complete the development of the Britannia field, reach that target of the 20,000 barrels per day. And we need to also have some credit facility to be able to set hedges, just to protect the downside. And we're going to be very careful. That is next to me here, our CFO, will make sure that it is done smartly in the future. And then we have also set aside some of that money to do one or two synergistic acquisitions. And that's very important for us. The Britannia oil is 19 API gravity, so requires that we mix it with natural gasoline. So looking for something that has light oil will make a lot of sense for us. That's where it becomes very synergistic. We always highlight the fact that the Britannia wells are very prolific. These are very clean sands, highly permeable. They come strong wells, 4, 5, 6,000 barrels per day. But interestingly, our oil has only 0.5% sulfur, no heavy metals. Always call it a clean oil. Which is why last year when BP bought a first shipment of 500,000 barrels, they paid at Brent minus $1.39. Excellent discount. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm going to pick off one or two of those things in your answer individually, if I may. But one of the things I was going to talk about is the way that you export the oil from Britannia. I remember when we first met, you showed me a map that showed a number of different ways that you could export your crude. You've been doing it primarily through the pipeline. But I noticed in the last month or so, you've done a shipment through Brazil into the Atlantic, and you've got another one on the go. So tell me all about the different ways and why you've done this, and how appropriate it is for your options in terms of shipping the oil.
You know, the pipeline option is the most logical one. You know, we barge the oil to the pump station number one, and then Peru, the state company that owns the pipe, owns the Talara refinery. That's where I grew up. That's why the company called PetroTal. And that refinery is going to be fully upgraded by the end of the year. They want our oil. So that's the logical way of going.
Yeah.
Last year, because of the pandemic, there were some social unrest that ensued, protests against the government for not taking care of the locals. People would keep in mind we're in the jungle of Peru, and the government forgot about them. And they shut down the pipeline. And then we were forced to look at this other option that we had not yet tested, which is taking the Amazon River all the way to near Manaus, and then the trading company that is based in Houston took it to the U.S. That optionality is very important for us. And we have indicated to Peru that we plan to maintain that optionality of going either via the pipe or via the Amazon. Anybody that sells any product, you want to have as many markets as possible. It makes a lot of sense. Interestingly, talking about our recent bond offering, Peru, the state company, yesterday also closed a bond offering for $1 billion to complete the Talara refinery project. And again, our oil is high quality oil. And I think that with that offering and the completion of the refinery, Peru, which is owned by the state, is going to make sure that that pipeline is going to be working constantly. Nevertheless, we intend to keep that optionality, which is why at the end of this month, we're doing a second shipment of 200,000 barrels to Brazil. And we believe that those type of volumes, the option of the Amazon River or the pipeline will have same netbacks for us, but give us that flexibility that is so important for us.
Well, it's always good to have a diversification of risk, and this is certainly improved that, and it's no discount or major effect on the prices. You know, you've been very busy in the last few months sorting this out. What have you got specifically coming up? I mean, we've got quite a lot of things that we've spoken about. We've got increase in production. We've got the 4 wells. We've got a well, quite a long well program this summer, spring and summer, and you've got phase 2 of the facility. So tell us all about what's coming up. Really exciting things.
Yes, no, I'll be very happy to do that. You know, something that I've been telling our investors last year when we went through this pandemic that has impacted so many people is that PetroTal will exit this crisis stronger than before. And again, the $100 million bond offering does that. We also signed a new contract with Peru that when they buy the oil at the first pump station, they will hedge. It's now their oil. They will hedge the oil, so we don't incur any more risk on future pricing differentials.
Right.
In the exports to Brazil, the trader buys FOB Britannia, so it completely eliminates the issue also of any risk differentials. So now we have money. We are well safe with those 2 types of optionality. So we are now set to move into the future, which is finish the setting up the facilities in Britannia. They are all already on their way. These are the production facilities to be able to process the crude oil and be able to sell it. They are on their way to Britannia, which we should have all of the new tanks ready by the 3rd quarter. And then the drilling campaign on the 2 PKs, we will need to drill a total of 8 wells. So we plan to drill 4 oil wells this year and 1 water disposal. The following year, we'll build the other 4 wells and probably another disposal. It all depends if we need it or not. On the 3P case, we could actually continue drilling a few extra wells. And the concept is to be able to reach a plateau and a tail of production for years to come that with no more capex, it be free cash flowing. Also, as I mentioned, we have set aside some of these $100 million bond to do at least one key strategic acquisition. And we are already working on that, as you can imagine, which also will allow us to no longer be a single producing asset company, because right now we only have Bretaña. So we do a small acquisition, a producing asset, nothing too big, and then we need to focus also on our Block 107, where we see a lot of potential. And that well probably going to be drilled sometime early 2022. So now you get a sense that we have done a good job of making sure that this company was going to exit the crisis stronger than before and has a good future for us.
So yes, I was going to ask the acquisition question, but you've almost answered it there. But so in terms of acquisition, you've said that it would be accretive to you. It sounds like there are a number of potential acquisitions that you've got your eyes on, presumably in your area, your geographical area. Other sort of distressed sellers are the people who are that will be able to buy their companies or production at the moment?
Yes, and there's a couple of opportunities we're looking inside Peru. The team is also looking outside. Ecuador, Colombia come to mind. They're very close. The same oil place that we've been dealing in Bretaña. Our team, as you know, Malcy, is extremely experienced. Our senior technical team is all ex-Oxy, very familiar with this type of environments, and that's why we have executed flawlessly from day one. So I think we have a good team to be able to select a couple of good assets for us to diversify. Initially, I think inside Peru, but we need to also start looking outside Peru. That's close by.
And yeah, so well, and if you get you'll be increasing your production this year, and you've got your target of 20,000 barrels a day by the end of next year or September of next year. By that stage, you will be a pretty substantial company, one way or the other. It's one of the exciting things about the company, especially after a sort of slightly tricky year last year. You're in a very strong position now in all departments.
Yes, and actually, in Peru, we are already the second largest crude oil producer in Peru. By the end of this year, we should be the largest crude oil producer. Emphasize crude oil because Peru produces a lot of gas and condensate. But in crude oil, we're going to be the largest company. That brings a lot of responsibility to us, as you can imagine. And I always am very proud of the fact that on ESG matters, we actually are a leading force in Peru, and we work very closely with the government to make sure that what happened last year with PetroPeru, it doesn't happen again. And we are very much involved in all of the environmental, social issues. We have the concept of always empowering the local communities for them to own their future, and it's part of that responsibility of becoming the largest crude oil producer in Peru.
Yeah, and obviously we know that Peru is a very stable operating environment. It needs the oil that you discover, and so it must be a pretty perfect operating conditions to be working in. Yeah.
Yeah, Peru. There's a couple of examples. Last November, Peru issued $4 billion on bonds at a best price ever. About 170 basis points from. And very successfully. Part of that was even at 100 years. As I mentioned earlier, PetroPeru just issued $1 billion at 4.6%. So that gives you an idea of how the market sees Peru. Financially, Peru has done an outstanding job. It's still a poor country with social issues, but I think that's where we come in as a private company with this leadership on ESG matters to help the government and help all of the stakeholders be successful in the future.
Excellent. Before we go, I know it's not really anything you can specifically answer a question on, but I've got two questions about shares. One is that recently you initially had Remus coming on buying a chunk of shares from Gran Tierra, and then a few weeks after that, Gran Tierra stopped that transaction and sold a big part of that holding in the marketplace to what you called different entities. Have you got any comments to make about the fact that that your shares have been tracked around like this?
I'd be happy to do that. You know, we met with the people from Remus. You know, it's really nice, and the idea that they brought forward is actually quite fascinating. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. It looks like we were just providing information to them to take the decision to buy the Gran Tierra block of the stock that they have from PetroTal. But it looks like Gran Tierra, of course, needed some capital and decided to sell half of that block to 3 other parties. So one of whom are actually a shareholder of the company. And that gives an idea of the support that we have with our shareholders, that they are willing to come in and buy those shares. And I would like to also mention that last year in June, of course, we went back to our investors and did an $80 million equity raise, which was critical for us to be able to overcome the crisis. Again, proving the support that we have with our equity shareholders. And now on this bond offering, I understand that some of our large shareholders also participated in the bond offering. Again, showcasing what they see coming in the future.
It's no surprise that you're very popular. The company is doing very well. I saw that in a couple of pieces of broker research that I read a couple of days ago, they've got target prices of 35p and 50p, which is more than double the share price at the moment. You know, when I last wrote, I said that the shares, were extremely good value. And as you know, I've always been very keen. I think that you've got, as you say, a low-cost, high-margin asset. And in a rising oil price scenario that we've had, you've got a long way to go. How would you describe the upside as a sort of final question, Manolo? How would you describe the upside for shareholders from here?
Well, I just remind you that last January, we were already at 30p. So, of course, we, like everybody else, we suffered quite a bit during the pandemic. And I think that the 30, 50p goal is easily obtainable if we continue executing that we've been doing for the last several years. And now that we plan to diversify some or expand our production footprint, and then go into the Block 107, we could go way beyond that. Trying to manage the expectations.
Well, it's a very powerful story, Manolo, and I'd like to thank you very much indeed for joining me today.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and I've been doing my CEO interview for Corp Finance. My guest today has been Manolo Zuniga, who's president and CEO of PetroTal Corp. I'd like to thank him and thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.